folks, Steve Kaposi here at the Adventuring and Camping School in Northeast Thailand. Just want a quick chat on a couple of knives that I've got here. It's a concept I call the Campknife. Now, I always advocate that you carry several knives with you. At a minimum, you want to carry your main working knife and your smaller working knife. They're videos I've already got online. You never take one knife with you. You always want options when it comes to knives and cutting tools and so forth. Whenever I go camping, I've got 4, 5, 6 cutting tools, several knives, even a foldable pruning saw, Swiss Army knives and so forth. I'm yet to do a video where I advocate what tools you take with you when you go camping. But I just want to do a quick video on these couple of knives. They're knives you can have. Notice I said they're not knives you should have or must have. There's must have, should have. These are can haves. You don't need them, absolutely. Quickly go through these knives. This one doesn't have a sheath. I've just got it with a rubber band, if I can get that off. That's just a cover from a pen, actually. A pen went in there, so I cut the end off, and it's just a handy cover to put the knife in to protect it in the pack and so forth. If I take this thing out, and I'll show you up close, this is just a kitchen knife. Check it out. It's just a kitchen knife. It cost about $12 back in Sydney, Australia. And I'm going to call this my camp knife, my first camp knife. First camp knife, or one camp knife. And you'll notice it's actually quite a good quality knife. It's actually full tang all the way back through, fairly thick, nice and sharp. It's got a nice big handle, just like that. Stainless steel, which definitely is what you want. Forget about high carbon steel for these knives. It's stainless steel all the way. It's just a kitchen knife. Fairly cheap, although when I say cheap, it's a good quality kitchen knife. About $12 it cost me. Now, as a first camp knife, that's fine. For me, a good camping trip is a camping trip where I don't even take out my big knives. If I can use a small cheap knife instead of my main big knife, which I can then preserve sharpness and don't damage or blunt the knife and so forth, keep those pristine, that's a good camping trip where I don't use my main knives. And especially around camp, you can have this knife around camp just for especially cooking, cutting meat, even stirring pots and so forth. I'm going to grab that knife around camp before I grab my main bushcraft knives. I want to keep those pristine and clean. This you can just wipe off on a cloth material, a tea towel, which I quite often take with me, just a cotton tea towel. It's better than a bandana. Some people just talk about cotton bandanas, but if you take a tea towel, it's a cheap one, you've got a cloth you can wash yourself with, dry your knives and tools and so forth. So there's just a camp knife, what I call my first camp knife, just like that. A cheap kitchen knife, that's all it is. Fine around camp, just for tasks, and you can save your main knives and so forth for other bigger jobs. It happens to be Stanley Rogers. Stainless steel, 9cm, 3.5 inch, that's what it says on the knife. And then you can go to what I call my second camp knife. And look at that thing. This thing I brought in a packet of 4 for $8, about $2 each. It's got a handy cover at least, and this is just the cheapest, dirtiest, downright, cheapest knife you can ever buy. Just a thin stainless steel blade in a plastic handle. It's nothing at all. And a nice little, it weighs nothing. Now both these knives weigh nothing. They can easily go into a pack and you can take it with you. But again, around camp, I take that. If I'm around camp, I'm just going to grab it. I'm going to use that knife before I even use that knife. I'm going to use that knife before I take out my smaller working knife. I'm going to use my smaller working knife before I use my main working knife. So you can see how your main bushcraft knives are preserved and stay clean and pristine, the edges stay sharp. So the first thing I'll use around camp is just a dirty, cheap knife, stir in your cooking pot, opening new packets of noodles, food and so forth, cutting, just around camp, that's what you want. If I don't use my big main knife on a camping trip, that's a good camping trip for me. My concept of a camp knife, a first camp knife and a second camp knife. I hope you found that interesting. Keep up the great work. Let me know what you think, and I'll see you next time.